Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson here, President and Founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's edition of the Daily Stand-Up. So without any further ado, let's get started. It's Monday. It's the beginning of a new week, and last week I had a really great class. We were talking about eliminating and managing dependencies and doing some proper adjustments. And one of the topics came up about shuffling people around to manage dependencies to make sure you had good coverage. Another person said that they shift items in the backlog in and out of a sprint to manage dependencies. And how timely is this? My good friend Bob Hartman from Agile for All, he 4 days ago exactly, he put together a tip where he talked about good ways to eliminate dependencies, or at least the first step when managing dependencies. And I think that he's on to something, because when we talk about dependencies, a lot of people talk about eliminating them, when in fact managing them may be the key. So let me explain. So he started off by saying he did a Google search for manage agile dependencies. And are you ready for this? 5.5 million results. Now, that's both good and bad. That means that obviously there's a hot spot, that there's a lot of people out there who care about this topic, but it also means that probably 5 million of those responses at least are misleading, wrong, or guiding you to a different answer than what you're looking for. Anytime there's that much writing about a topic, there's usually a need for some definitive place to go. So I'm grateful for Bob and for his willingness to put together something that was short and sweet, that was concise, but that gave us part of the answer, or the answer that I was most looking for at least. So the question becomes, do we manage? Do we eliminate? How do we eliminate? So eliminating a dependency ensures that it's never going to cost us anything again in the future, which is obviously the route we want to go if possible. So when you're trying to eliminate a dependency, one of the first things he recommends is removing the work creating the dependency. Now let me tell you, I think that's a great idea. I'd love to do that. It's just in all the projects that I've worked on, Bob, it's just really hard to find ways to convince people that eliminating work is the answer. Um, Anytime you're trying to remove work, you just have to jump through a lot of hoops. You have to get a lot of people convinced. Sometimes I find it nearly impossible to just remove the work. It's not like we can just go in and say, you know what, let's just take this work off the plate. For whatever reason, people aren't receptive. They're not comfortable with that. So I think that, while this is a wildly popular, yes, let's do it kind of option, sometimes it's less possible. Now, there are creative ways to realign the work, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but removing the work altogether may not be the best strategy. Second recommendation he throws out there is to move the work to a different team that wouldn't have a dependency. Now, that's a winner. One of the things that I've discovered is that most teams are struggling because they're I-shaped teams. They work in a silo, they have deep knowledge in one area, and they're not T-shaped, so they don't have those cross-functional abilities to be able to handle things to eliminate a lot of these dependencies. Where if more of your teams were T-shaped or more cross-functional, they have deep knowledge in a subject area, but also cross-functional knowledge at the top, that would allow for those teams to better be able to address or handle the work without necessarily always having to shift people around. So one of the things that I saw when I was addressing this with the team during the training was I asked them, what are some ways that you can eliminate dependencies? And some of the things they said first were, well, what we do is we just shift people around. So we find a person who's the expert and get them involved right away. Another person said, oh, well, we eliminate dependencies by inserting all the work we need in the sprint. Even if the sprint's already begun, we'll interrupt the sprint, insert the additional work just to eliminate the dependency right there on the spot and nip it in the bud. And I was like, wow. Another group made the third recommendation here. It was a software organization, and they said, we'll use a mock-up or a stub to simulate the dependent piece that's already existing to do the work around it so that we can get things there. And that makes logical sense. That makes perfect sense, right? It's kind of a Captain Obvious answer, but what I can tell you is sometimes those answers are the ones that generate the best interest. So I think that if you eliminate dependency, while it doesn't cost you anything, the question is that always a possibility? And I think that too many times we get stuck in this trap where we're always trying to pivot to adjust people and swarm people and do these type of things instead of adjusting the work in such a way that the teams don't have to shift people, but they can swarm and get the work done. So I think this boils down to, are we eliminating the ability of the team to get the work done by not keeping the work well organized? Or are we eliminating the ability of the work to be well organized because of the way we have the team addressing the work? And either way, it's not a good answer. So While I have mad respect for Bob Hartman, he and I have been friends for years. And what I can tell you is every single conference we've gone to, we've battled for the number one position when it comes to speaking and the ratings and the things like that. And he is just fantastic at what he does at Agile for All. What I can tell you is I don't know that we have a difference of opinion, but I think that we have a difference of approach. And I think that for me, if I had to identify the top three things that I would do, so top three things to manage the dependency. Number one for me would be make sure your teams are cross functional and T shaped. If you have T shaped teams that are able to tackle this work, it's better for you to understand and keep those teams cohesive and attack the work and organize the work in such a way that the teams can swarm, as opposed to constantly readjusting people on a team and trying to catch up. Two, don't find ways to necessarily remove work or eliminate the dependency. Instead, try to find ways to better manage or govern the work. If you can govern a backlog or govern the work or get the work organized in such a way that it makes it easier for teams to swarm and take care of, then you can eliminate part of that battle. And three is make sure you have debt taken care of, whether it's technical or non-technical debt. If you get that debt taken care of, it increases the bandwidth. And as a bonus, make sure you're honoring your WIP limits. If you're honoring your work in progress limits, it also makes it very easy for you to identify dependencies and to plan for those ahead of time so that you don't get caught by them at the last second. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of today's Daily Stand-Up. Trying to keep it short and sweet. As always, we encourage you to visit agiledad.com where you can learn more about this topic and others. And if you have a topic that you want to hear discussed at the Daily Stand-Up, don't hesitate to reach out to us at lee@agiledad.com where we'd love to hear your ideas. We got lots of time to do these. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time,